Hello and welcome to your UFC hot takes. As always, if you want to be in these videos in the future, head over to my community tab and find that designated post. Leave a comment underneath that and you will have a chance of being in this next hot take video. Also, if you want to ensure a spot and make sure you're in the next hot take video, go over to my Twitter at Kendall with a 1, KYND1E. Leave a comment underneath that post and you will for sure be in the next hot take video. But that's pretty much it. Let's not waste any more time and let's get right into your UFC hot takes. So starting off with our first hot take, we have Robert Whitaker won that second fight against Israel Adesanya pretty clearly. Nowhere near close going to Israel Adesanya. Now, I believe that Whitaker did win that fight. However, I don't believe that it was not close to going to Israel Adesanya. In my opinion, I think Whitaker won that fight 3 rounds to 2. I think his grappling at moments barely edged him some rounds. But overall, maybe you could give that fight to Israel Adesanya, but I humbly agree. I do believe that Whitaker did get robbed, and he definitely should have won that fight versus Israel Adesanya. The best rivalry in UFC history is Dominick Cruz versus Team Alpha Male. Now, this is a really good rivalry here, but is it the best in UFC history? I don't know, but the fact that Team Alpha Male was basically designing fighters just to beat Dominick Cruz tells you pretty much all you need to know. Dominick Cruz was a thorn in the side of Team Alpha Male. They were willing to design a complete fighter just to beat Dominick Cruz, and they happened to be successful with Cody Garbrandt, but overall Team Alpha Male throughout the years just couldn't find a certain fighter in their gym to beat Dominick Cruz up until Cody Garbrandt, and they really put a lot of effort into getting somebody to finally beat Dominick Cruz. Unrelated, but if it wasn't already obvious, they're doing Song Yadong versus Kai Asakura, and it then goes to justify that by giving some past history involving Yuri Prochazka moving over from Ryzen to the UFC. Now, I don't know if they're doing Kai Asakura versus Song Yadong. I don't really want them to do that. I like Song Yadong, and I want Kai Sakura to come into the UFC and have success, and I don't want him to have success in the expense of Song Yadong. But if they are doing that, it does make sense. Again, in the past, they did do Yuri Prochazka versus Volkan Ozdemir when he first got into the UFC. Ryzen is a good promotion. Their fighters there have really good resumes and good records, so it does make sense for Kai Sakura to probably get a top opponent. It's like any fighter from Bellator or any other promotion that is somewhat relative to the UFC. They're going to get a good matchup in their UFC debut. Even MVP got a ranked guy in his UFC debut. So anybody who comes from another credible promotion is probably going to get a ranked fighter in the UFC when they make their debut. So it wouldn't surprise me if Kai Sakura got Song Yadong in his UFC debut. Apparently Song Yadong right now is scheduled to be on UFC 305, but he has no opponent. It definitely could be Kai Sakura to take that spot to fight Song Yadong. Balal Muhammad will 50-45 mumble mouth Leon Edwards. Now, I don't agree with that at all. I'm actually going to take Edwards to beat Balal Muhammad, but can Balal win? For sure. Now, I will save my whole prediction and breakdown for a later video when fight week occurs. However, can Balal win? Yes, he can. Will he 50-45 Leon Edwards? I don't really agree with that at all. Even in their first fight that they had in the UFC that was cut short by an eye poke, Leon Edwards was winning that fight pretty clearly. I think it'll be the same thing when they fight again at UFC 304. Now again, can Balal win? For sure, but will he 50-45 Edwards? That's just not in the cards for me. I think if Balal does go out there and win, I think he barely scoots by a close decision. 50-45 is just crazy in my opinion, but it is what it is. The UFC 303 card is much better without Conor McGregor, and I agree. Even though I like Conor and I want him to be on the card, even though he brings so much value and so much money to the UFC, with Conor McGregor on a card, he is for sure going to sell over 1 million pay-per-views. But when I look at UFC 303 with Conor on it and without Conor on it, I think Alex Pereira and Yuri Prochazka is a better fight competitive-wise, and I think the addition of Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez is a good co-main event. Now, obviously, Jamal Hill and Carlos Ulberg being off the card hurts that, and now it's replaced by Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze, so that doesn't really help out anything at all. But I think the first initial plan for UFC 303 with Conor versus Chandler and with Jamal Hill versus Ulberg compared to Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prochazka and Ortega versus Lopez, I do think that the latter is a way better card than what Conor was on. Let's be real here. Conor at this point is not fighting for a championship belt, and the fact that we have a championship belt on the line for UFC 303, I think makes it a better card. It's just that Conor brings so much money and value to the UFC, but I think having a championship fight on the card now makes it so much better. Jon Jones will finish Stipe Miocic. Alex Pereira will move up for a super fight, and Jones will finish him too and retire as the best to ever do it. Now, if the UFC actually goes through with this, screw him. I would hate this. This is probably the wrong timeline if this set of events does end up happening. Jon Jones, at some point before he retires, needs to fight Tom Aspinall. I can't help myself. He needs to fight Tom Aspinall no matter what. I don't care. Even if he does fight Stipe first, I think if he doesn't retire after he beats Stipe, then the next best option would be Tom Aspinall. Jon Jones needs to unify the heavyweight belt. There's no way you can justify Tom Aspinall being the interim champion, sitting out and defending that belt while Jon Jones does fuck all. And let's be real here, Jon Jones should not even be fighting Stipe in the first place. Stipe has done nothing to earn a title shot besides his legacy. And guess what? His last fight in the UFC, he lost by brutal knockout to Francis Ngannou. He does not deserve to sit out for years upon years and just age like an old man and then fight Jon Jones because Jon Jones wants it. Jon Jones has done so many bad things to the UFC in the past. He has ruined events. He's popped for roids, and yet he still has the power to conduct and pick and choose whoever he wants to fight, and that to me is just unacceptable. I think at some point the UFC should force Jon Jones to fight Tom Aspinall if he does not retire. However, now does Jon Jones beat Stipe Miocic? I agree. And let's say in some fictional world or some future events in this current timeline, let's say Alex Pereira moves up and he fights Jon Jones at heavyweight. I do believe Jon Jones does beat Alex Pereira. And real quick before we move on to the next hot take, I want to give out a special announcement. The Patreon is live, and trust me, it is worth your time to go over there and check it out. We have fight reviews over there. We have early access to my full card predictions. You can even vote on which fight that I will review for that specific week. So go check out the Patreon. I am 100% sure it is worth your time to go check it out. Sean Strickland is one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC right now, and I totally agree. People like to dunk on Sean Strickland because of the fact that his fights are pretty boring, but he has a really good resume at middleweight. Beating Jack Hermanson, beating Imavov. When he fought Cannonier, I thought it was a robbery. I did think Strickland did beat Cannonier. Beating Israel Adesanya, beating Paulo Costa. Like, Sean Strickland's resume is a really, really, really good resume. And you can even argue he beat Dricus du Plessis. I think Dricus won that fight, but it is a good argument to have for Strickland. You can argue that he did beat Dricus. I just don't really agree with that. I think Dricus barely won that fight, but it is a very, very close fight, and it can go either way. I don't mind anybody's opinion about who won that fight. But Sean Strickland as a whole has a really, really underrated resume right now, and he is definitely one of the best fighters at middleweight. He should be getting that next title shot at middleweight against the winner of DDP and Israel Adesanya. Cyril Gane isn't top 3 in his division, and he would lose to Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blades, and Almeida. And right now, currently, as things are and on this certain day, I do agree with you. I think Cyril Gane right now is just not focused on MMA. He's out in France making movies, doing his thing. He's just not really caring about MMA right now. And if he were to come back and fight in the UFC sometime this year, I think that he would lose to anybody who has good grappling at heavyweight. I think he would lose to Jon Jones, obviously. I think he would lose to Tom Aspinall because of grappling. I think he loses to Blades because of grappling. Maybe he can beat Almeida. I think that's his best matchup out of the 4 guys you listed. But don't get me wrong, Almeida has a very, very strong chance with his, I would say, pretty elite grappling. So Cyril Gane right now, it's not looking too good for him. I don't think he's top 3 right now. He is top 5, of course. He does have talent. He's a good striker. But overall, Cyril Gane does bother me a little bit with his time off doing his France and movie stuff, whatever it's called. But yeah, I do agree. Cyril Gane is not top 3 in heavyweight right now. But that is it, guys. That is all of your hot takes. Thank you to everybody who went to the community page and submitted a hot take. I really, really do appreciate you guys so much. But I'm out of here, guys. Like, subscribe, hit that bell icon for notifications, and I'll see y'all later.